News dropped yesterday from Matt Hayes of Saturday Down South that Billy Napier made a play at hiring an offensive coordinator. Now, this is something that UF fans have been asking for quite a while. And even though a hire has not been made, it does show a lot of promise about what may happen in the near future. Here is what Matt Hayes reported. He said multiple sources told Saturday Down South that Napier took a run at Charlie Weiss Jr., a definitive sign that he understands the enormity of what he's facing in 2024. He couldn't convince Weiss, who is one of the game's top young offensive minds, to leave Ole Miss and Lane. But his pursuit shows that he's interested in giving up complete control of the offense. He coaches the quarterbacks. He calls the plays. I don't care what the staff titles say. He is in complete control of that offense. But if he's willing to give it up and become more of a CEO coach, that's a great sign. Now, if he can find an OC that fits. I spoke with some folks that said an offer was never made. And this is a situation probably where the cliche, you only make an offer if that person is accepting. That's likely true in this situation. But it is also true that an official offer was never made. But it does show his willingness to change things up a bit. And I think that's really important. I spoke with Shelton from Hightop Sports about some of this last night on our live. Listen to that, and then I'll share some thoughts to wrap this video up.
I was reading an article from Saturday Down South where Billy was heavily pursuing the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss. Did you hear anything about that?
Charlie Weiss Jr. I saw that and talked to a few people about it. They said a conversation took place. It didn't, an offer didn't happen or whatever. But, that honestly is probably the best news that I've heard, this offseason, though, in my opinion, because at least shows us that Napier is still potentially interested in bringing in an offensive coordinator. And I don't know where you stand on this, but prior to reading that article this morning, I honestly thought that dream was kind of dead because if we, everything's over. College football's done. If there was somebody you were going to make a move on, you would have already made a move on them. You're not getting an NFL offensive coordinator to come in and run your scheme. I've heard that he thinks that some of the names that have been thrown around are too young or don't have experience enough. I don't know how you thought Austin Armstrong had enough experience, but some of these, potential OCs don't. But I was pretty much resigned myself to the fact that I thought he wasn't hiring one. So that was actually kind of promising news, even though we obviously struck out on him.
Yeah, once again, like you same thing, just where we are on timelines wise. I don't see us going after anybody, but I mean, there is a lot of shuffling around with coaches, so I think there is a possibility still.
Yeah.
But also too, with that coach, the AD coming in to manage the front office, we don't really quite know what it is, but how I'm looking at it is like the biggest thing with Billy that people keep saying he's in over his head. And I think part of that is maybe play calling, but not necessarily. I think it's managing everything and also managing the boosters, having those conversations. That's something that, again, I've talked to a lot of people about, like coming in and being able to sell the UAA or sell the idea that, hey, we have to go do these things. That's a whole nother animal that, look, you may have X's and O's like a beast, but to have this conversation, you just may not be the guy. And that's where you could lose the job. You may be a great coach, but it's more than just being a coach. When that guy hired that guy, I was like, maybe that's in a sense an offensive coordinator type of move because you're taking something off your plate. That's how I viewed that.
Do you think Napier hires an OC or does he promote someone? Thoughts, please. And, I know we discussed this a little bit at the beginning of the live as well, but if he promotes someone from within, if he hires, who's he getting? And do they run his system or do they bring in their own?
The amount of names that I've heard at this point, I feel like nobody has a clue who's going to come in. And Ethan Callaway's been announced or been thrown around again. I think that's just people just a feeling like of what could happen being promoted. Yeah. Look, the offense that was ran at Liberty, I think only ranked, which is I can't think of his name at the moment. I was only about 2 or 3 spots rated higher than us, I believe, on offense. Now, again, I think the reason that we all wanted offensive coordinator, the reason why I mentioned that was because, again, it wasn't the fact that the play calling was that atrocious. It felt like everything else was a mess because he's too busy running everything. So I'm kind of 50-50 on the offensive play calling. And I feel like he's kind of the same way. Like it wasn't horrible. It was just we were missing on everything else. And maybe with the addition of the Ron Robertson, who's going to be like an executive on defense. Maybe those things will help. I don't know, but you've also hired Jarrell Chapman and Will Harris, who are both extremely young in those positions. So you could put yourself in that same type of situation. I don't know.
I think with an offensive coordinator, Billy's offense is pretty good, and we average just over 30 points a game. And obviously you want to do better than that. I think the if you look at the New Year's Six teams, I think Ohio State averaged like 34 points a game, and they were the lowest average offensive point scoring of the schools that made it to New Year's Six Bowl. So obviously you want to get up a little bit from that 30, but I think in general the offense was not the issue, and the scripted play calls going into games were fantastic. I think my issue is that it always felt like he didn't have a great feel for the flow of the game, and so it just
I
felt like
agree.
shot ourselves in the foot at the most inopportune times. And it cost us, or we'd be doing something successfully, so then we'd try something else. And I don't know if there needs to be somebody else that weighs in on that play calling. I don't know if it's that 10 other things need to be taken over Napier's plate that aren't offensive play calling, but that are just drawing his attention. But there needs to be some kind of change, because we found ourselves so many times getting into that situation where we could have won games had we not shot ourselves in the foot.
And I think look at every successful team. Look at the final four teams in the playoff. They all have great offensive coordinators running the ship. So, Bama has Nick Saban running everything, but Michigan, their offensive coordinator, that guy's an absolute G. He ran the team for half the damn season because Harbaugh took half the year off.
Right.
Obviously, we know about Washington's offensive coordinator. He wanted the job at Washington. I saw his post. It seems like he's headed to possibly Alabama. So he's a great offensive coordinator or offensive mind as well. So when everyone else is doing something, there's you trying to do it differently, doesn't make sense. Eli Drinkwitz, I think, is a prime example of somebody who came in, took over a new program, tried to build it, and then the year that he handed things over was like, all right, it's time for me to pass this over so I can focus over. Like Drinkwitz and Napier, in my sense, kind of give me the same vibe. They're the players love them. They're bought in. Yep. They recruit very well. The guys that they end up getting committed, it doesn't feel like it's just like a by the like the guys going to Auburn. It doesn't feel like it's a genuine relationship. It's like, yeah, there's money here. I'm gonna go play here. Mizzou feels like he's recruiting the hell out. There's money involved too, but he's recruiting the hell out of him. He built a relationship, and look at the success they're having. They are a unit on that football team. They're only top 20 in recruiting. They're not giving you top 10 classes. They're not knocking your socks off with talent. They're there. They're close enough, and that's all you really need. And then the rest of it comes down to coaching and just being able to manage the discipline. Yeah, that's where we're lacking. It's like, look, if Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou can figure out, hey, I probably should make a decision. Billy, watch what other people are doing that you are similar to.
Exactly. And Drinkwitz is a good example for us Gator fans too, because Mizzou was patient. Now they're in a different situation for us because I think that their expectations are lower than the expectations we have here at Florida. It's championship or bust for UF. We've tasted the promised land. We're not going back. We're not okay with just 10-win seasons. And I think Mizzou is okay with that, but they allowed him time to build what he wanted there, and it is working, but he's made adjustments along the way. And the quote that he had over the summer about why he got an offensive coordinator should have been a wake-up call for Billy, because he just said he had his hand in too many things and he needed to be able to focus his attention elsewhere. And I think that would be so big for Billy. And you know what? Let somebody else call the plays. You handle special teams. We'll get better in 2 out of 3 facets of the game just by that one decision. Okay, so all of that to say, I think that Billy Napier understands the urgency here. 2024, no matter what anybody says, is kind of do or die for Billy Napier. Do I think he needs to make the playoffs or a New Year's Six Bowl to keep his job? No, I don't. But I do think he's going to need to be bowl eligible. Now, generally, that's a pretty low bar, but 2024 is the hardest schedule in the country next season. It's one of the hardest schedules that Florida will have ever played, which is kind of saying something because Florida always plays a very intense schedule. There's a lot riding on what happens. You return a quarterback who was incredibly reliable last year. He is a leader. He should really bring some consistency to that place, but you've got to score more points. You've got to finish drives. You've got to walk away with points in the red zone. And, I think it's one of those situations where Billy Napier just kind of wears too many hats. But I also understand why he would be resistant to change. If 2024 really is do or die for Billy Napier, do you want to rely on somebody else to help you cross that finish line or, lose your job for you? Or do you want to rely on what got you there, which is yourself? So I understand the hesitancy, but I think it's really important that he's open to change. And we're seeing that. You don't have a conversation with a current offensive coordinator about an opening that might exist if you're not at least semi-interested in shaking things up. And I think that would be the best possible move for Billy Napier. He lets go of the individual play calling. It can still be his system. I think it still should be his system. It is overall effective. He just needs some help with the in-game play calling. But that can free him up to continue to groom quarterbacks or, God forbid, take over special teams, something where his attention could really be more focused. I think that it's a good sign. I think there's a chance we see a move here in the next few weeks. There's a big coaching convention coming up. We'll see if any news comes out of that as well. But I think this is a great sign for Gator fans. So who would you hire if you were in charge here? Is there anyone at the top of your short list for offensive coordinator? I'm very interested to see if any moves are made or if Napier's able to get somebody here this season. That's hard too, right? Because that it's potentially only 1 year. I think he has what it takes to go for the long term. I think he's got to get at least bowl eligible to get a shot at 2025 though. So how good of a salesman is he to convince somebody to come here for what's only a guaranteed year at this point? Let's talk about all of this down in the comments though. Let me know. Who are you interested in? Who are the names on your hotbed? Does he convince anybody to come? I want to hear about it. I appreciate you all for watching. As always, go Gators.